Why was she the only one awake at this hour? The others slept, or at least pretended to. But she lay there, eyes open, watching the ceiling of the makeshift barracks tent, the dim red light pulsing like a heartbeat. Outside, the Hindu Kush wind scraped across gravel, rattling something metallic in the distance. She listened to it, counted the gusts, felt the rhythm of the mountains breathing. Sable Winters had been awake for hours, though her shift didn't start until dawn. She wasn't restless. She wasn't anxious. Not exactly. It was something else. A stillness. A tuning of the mind before a moment that hadn't arrived yet. She always felt it before missions. Like the air itself was waiting for her. She quietly sat up, swung her boots over the side of the cot, laced them with neat, practiced movements. The others never noticed how she moved, almost silent, learned from years of stalking deer across Wyoming fields at twilight. Out here it made her invisible. Some found that eerie, others intimidating. Most just overlooked her entirely. Chief Petty Officer Sable Winters was used to that. She rose, stretched her shoulders, and stepped outside. Morning hadn't arrived. The sky was more ink than color, stars barely visible through dust that never settled. The world was silent except for the wind and the faint hum of generators somewhere near the comms tent. She stood alone in the cold. It always came back to this, her against the quiet. Her rifle case leaned against the wall beside her. The Macmillan TAC-50 wasn't just a weapon, it was memory, legacy, proof, burden. Most saw only the steel and scope and heavy barrel. She saw her grandfather's hands guiding hers, teaching her how to breathe in rhythm with the world. But that felt like another lifetime. She carried the rifle case across the gravel lot, boots crunching softly, until she reached the far edge of base where the land fell away into shadowed mountains. The mountains looked endless and silent, and old enough to forget every human foot that had ever crossed them. She set the case down, opened it slowly. Metal matte black, cold as truth. Her fingers traced the length of the barrel like someone greeting an old friend. She checked the bolt, checked the scope, checked elevation turrets, checked windage. Everything she already knew was perfect, but checking wasn't about certainty. It was ritual. The act steadied her. Footsteps approached behind her. Light ones, someone trying not to disturb her. She didn't look, she knew who it was. Petty Officer Reeves, the spotter. "You're out early again," he said quietly. She nodded once. He joined her at the ridge, hands in his pockets, breath fogging softly. He wasn't unkind, just uncertain what to make of her. Most people were. "They're saying Morrison wants to reconsider the Overwatch positions," he said. She didn't respond. He hesitated before continuing. Something about wind patterns shifting, possible thermals rising at dawn, could push effective range well beyond what we planned. She finally looked at him. Reeves swallowed. "You're thinking of the mortar ridgeline," she said. "Yeah." He kicked at a rock with his boot, watching it tumble down into the dark. "That's what, 2,000 meters, 2,200, he asked, but the question wasn't really a question. 2,247, she corrected. He laughed once, not at her, just in disbelief. "Right, that." He waited for her to say something more. She didn't. That was what made them uneasy. Not that she was different, but that she never explained herself. "Look, Chief," he finally said, rubbing his neck. "Nobody's doubting your skill. It's just, most shooters don't even attempt shots at that distance. Not in real conditions. Not where wind shifts by the second and—" His voice trailed off. She watched the horizon. The earth beginning to glow with the first thin edge of dawn. Her expression didn't change. But inside, something she didn't speak flickered. They weren't doubting the shot. They were doubting her. Reeves sighed and exhaled steam into the cold air. "Never mind," he said. "Briefing in 30. She watched him walk away. The sky brightened. The mountains woke. and something deep inside her settled into place. She didn't need the briefing. She already knew. They were going to dismiss her again. Politely, professionally, respectfully. They would trust her within limits, within acceptable ranges, within familiar rules. Within comfort. Sable had never been comfortable there. She packed the rifle, sealed the case, and walked to the command tent. Inside, the team stood around a sand table map of the valley, colored markers, laser pointers, grainy drone stills pinned with tape. Lieutenant Morrison leaned over the map, jaw tight, eyes sharp. He didn't look up when she entered. "Mortar emplacement confirmed here," he said, tapping a point on the map. Reeves glanced at her, a fraction of warning in his gaze. Morrison continued, "Overwatch will be on High Ridge here. Engagement expected inside 1,500 meters. Anything farther, CAS will handle." There it was. She stepped forward. "Sir," she said, voice steady, "the mortar position is outside CAS windows until T+22. I can reach it from Overwatch. Request authorization to engage if needed." Silence. Not tense. Not hostile. Just that silence. The one that meant they were weighing her competence like currency. Morrison finally looked at her. "Chief, nobody is questioning your ability," he said. "But they were. They always were. It's extreme range, low probability." "Not low," she said, "calculable." Reeves looked between them, uncertain. Morrison exhaled slowly. "We go by doctrine here," he said. "We don't gamble on improbable shots. If the mortar activates, we call air support. That's final." Something inside her stilled. Not anger. Not disappointment. Recognition. This was how it always was. Trust her, but only to the edge they understood. She nodded once. Nothing more. Because arguing wasn't how she proved herself. She proved herself when it mattered. And she knew it would matter soon. The mission began before the sun fully cleared the mountains. The air was thin and sharp, biting at exposed skin. Every breath tasted like dust and cold metal. Sable crawled into position on the ridge. The fog clung low, rolling through the valley like slow-moving smoke. Perfect cover, perfect concealment, perfect silence. The team moved below, dust rising behind their boots, radios crackling quietly, a distant sense of motion in a world that felt otherwise frozen. She unfolded the rifle. Bolted bipod legs. Settled prone. Scope to eye. The valley opened before her like a map she had already studied 1,000 times. She began to watch. She became the watch. Hours passed. Stillness. Breathing. Wind reading. Micro-adjustments no one else would notice. At the compound below, the team executed their assault. Then the shouting began. Then the first gunfire burst. Then the pinned call. Then, mortar team moving into position. North Ridge, 2,100 meters, correction, 2,140, correcting. Her pulse didn't change. She watched movement through the scope. 5 men. Mortar tube. A crew practiced in killing from distance. Her radio crackled. Morrison's voice, tight, pressured. "Winter's call distance. 2,147 meters, she answered. Reeves cursed somewhere behind her. Then the words she already knew were coming. "Air support inbound. Hold fire, repeat, do not engage. Low probability shot. We wait for CAS." The mortar crew dropped the first round into the tube. Sable watched it fall. She watched everything. The fog lift. The wind shift. The heat mirage bend. She didn't look away. The explosion bloomed far below, walking closer. Screams on comms. gunfire cracking like snapping bones. Something burning. Winters, Morrison shouted. Hold position, CAS is 8 minutes, hold fire, do not risk the... She didn't key her mic. Didn't respond. She simply remembered her grandfather's voice. If you wait for permission to do the right thing, you'll be too late. She exhaled. Slow. Steady. Everything inside her going quiet. The world narrowed. The scope crosshairs were not just aiming. They were becoming inevitable. She touched the trigger. Not force. Not pressure. Just intention. The rifle roared. The mountains echoed. The bullet began its long, impossible journey. 3 seconds. 3 eternities. She did not blink. She did not breathe. She did not doubt. And somewhere far across the world of rock and air and gravity, a man fell. She began to work the bolt. Again. And again. And again. No words. No celebration. No adrenaline. Just precision. Just necessity. Just proof. And finally, silence. The valley was still again. The radio crackled softly. Winter's good shot. But she didn't smile. She simply watched the smoke rising in the distance and waited for the world to finish catching up to the fact that she had already decided who she was. Not invisible. Not underestimated. Just undeniable. She settled into her rifle rest again, eyes back to the valley. The mission wasn't over. And she wasn't done proving anything yet. What do you do after proving something no one believed you could do? Some would celebrate. Some would talk about it for days. Some would let it define them, become their armor, their identity, their comfort. Sable did none of those things. She simply kept her eye in the scope, breathing slow, steady, like the shot hadn't changed anything at all. Because to her, it hadn't. It was never about proving them wrong. It was about not letting the men below die. It was about the choice that was always there, act or regret. Regret was something she had learned to avoid like poison. The team below repositioned, moving in small bursts of motion, one covering the other, retreating toward the alternate extraction route. Their comms were steady now, voices controlled, breathing regulated. Fear had been replaced by precision. That was how elite soldiers lived. On the edge, always seconds from chaos, surviving on training, instinct, and the hope that someone was watching their backs. Today, that someone was her. But the valley was never done. It didn't let you win. It just waited for the next opportunity to take something. Through her scope she saw movement, fast, scattered shapes breaking from the rocks higher up the ridge. Reinforcements, not many, 5 maybe, a recon element but fast, coordinated. One of them paused, glass reflecting in sunlight. Binoculars. They were looking for her. She adjusted elevation 3 clicks. Wind correction by instinct now, not numbers. Muscle memory born from a lifetime of repeating the same movement. The spotter froze, his binoculars glinting like a signal mirror in the morning light. He was good, he knew how to search. But he didn't know what he was looking for. She exhaled. The rifle barked once. The sound slammed into the mountains, echoed and vanished. His body dropped. The others flinched, not even sure what direction the shot had come from. A second shot. Another fell. The remaining 3 scattered into rocks and shadows, gone. This time she did not pursue. Discipline mattered more than dominance. Below, Morrison's voice came through comms again, but different now. Not hesitant, not questioning. Just certain. Winters, keep Overwatch active, we're moving. And she nodded, though he could not see her. Because that was the tone she knew, the one she trusted, the one that wasn't about proving anything, just doing the job. Her role was simple. Stay unseen. Stay patient. Stay present. She watched the valley for another hour. Then she followed, climbing the ridge silently, moving like the mountain itself had shaped her. The extraction zone was miles away and she traveled alone. The others had vehicles. She had feet, lungs, discipline. It didn't bother her. Movement helped her think, or helped her avoid thinking. The difference didn't matter. By late afternoon they were back at base, tired, dusty, scraped, bruised, but alive. That was what mattered. Alive. She cleaned her rifle first, before food, before water, before sleep, before anything. Because the rifle was more than steel. It was the line between life and loss, between coming home and not. After cleaning, she sat alone at a metal table outside the barracks, the desert sun turning the world gold. Reeves walked up and sat across from her. He didn't ask. He didn't speak at first. He just sat. It was the first time he'd done that, without awkward hesitation. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "That shot," he said quietly. "I've been thinking about it. I still can't wrap my head around it. I've seen long-range shooters. Hell, I've worked with some. But that," he shook his head, "that was something else." She didn't respond. He didn't expect her to. "You didn't wait for permission," he continued. "No," she said softly. "Were you afraid of consequences?" "No." He absorbed the simplicity of that. "Why?" he asked. Her gaze didn't move. She watched dust swirl across the ground, carried by the dry afternoon breeze. "Because waiting would have cost lives," she said. He nodded slowly, not in agreement, just in understanding. Then she surprised him. "Fear isn't about consequences," she said. "It's about hesitation. If you hesitate long enough, the world makes the choice for you." Reeves looked at her for a long time. "You know," he said quietly, "when you arrived, a lot of the guys didn't think you last." She didn't flinch. She knew this already. "You weren't loud enough. You didn't fight for attention. You didn't," he paused. "You didn't appear like someone who'd take the hardest shot in the world and make it look like breathing." She let the silence sit between them. "It's not about appearing," she said. He smiled slightly. "Yeah, we figured that out today." She didn't smile back, but her eyes softened. Just a little. The formal report would take days, the review even longer. The footage from ISR drones would be analyzed frame by frame, angles examined, weather conditions logged, ballistic arcs calculated, distances confirmed. There would be questions, but Morrison's authorization was on record. The engagement was clean. Still, every time Sable closed her eyes that night, she saw the shot. Not the moment of impact. Not the death. The moment before. The silence. The stillness. The gravity. The weight of choosing. People thought snipers remembered kills. They didn't. They remembered decisions. The next morning, she woke early again. Not because of habit this time, but because something unsettled had followed her into sleep and shaken her awake before dawn. She walked to the same ridge as the day before. This time without the rifle. The sky was blue, thin clouds stretched like whispers over the mountains. The valley was quiet again, as if nothing had happened. Only she knew what had happened. Or rather, what almost happened. 12 men lived because she acted. One bullet had changed everything. So why did she feel nothing? Not pride. Not relief. Not satisfaction. Just quiet. Like she had done something inevitable. Something expected. Something that was always going to happen. Footsteps approached again. Different ones this time, heavier, steadier. She didn't turn. "You made the right call," Morrison said behind her. His voice was rough, tired, honest. She didn't answer. "You saved my team," he said. "You saved me." "Nothing." He stepped beside her. You knew it was the right decision before I did. Still nothing. He exhaled, frustrated. Do you ever take credit for anything you do? He asked. She finally looked at him. I don't need credit, she said. I just need to keep them alive. He stared at her. No rank. No authority. No orders. Just a man looking at a person he did not fully understand. You know, he said quietly, you weren't ignored because they didn't respect you. You were ignored because they didn't know how to read someone who doesn't talk to prove they belong. Her jaw tightened a fraction. And now, she asked. Morrison nodded once. Now, he said, they'll listen when you speak. She looked back at the valley. She didn't say thank you. He didn't expect her to. Respect wasn't spoken. It was earned in silence. And she knew deeply without doubt. This was only the beginning. There would be more missions, more decisions, more moments where hesitation meant death, more times when no one understood her until after she acted. But she was not here to be understood. She was here to endure. Quiet, unseen, essential, a force that did not ask to be believed, only to be needed. And needed she was, far more than anyone yet realized. Why did the silence feel heavier now? She had returned to the barracks, sat on her cot, boots still on, rifle cleaned and stored. The others talked quietly outside, laughter mixed with retellings of close calls, inside jokes, the usual after-mission release of tension. Someone had music playing, barely audible. Someone else smoked near the vehicles, life returning to normal. But inside her chest, something had not settled back. Her hands rested open on her knees, still, calm, too calm. Some people think adrenaline leaves your body quickly. It doesn't. It lingers like heat on metal. It hums. It changes the way you hear sound, the way you feel your own heartbeat. But this wasn't adrenaline anymore. It was something quieter, something colder. She didn't know how to name it. Reeves stepped into the tent, looked at her, studying her expression from across the room. He didn't speak at first. He just watched her breathing. He could tell something was off, but he didn't know how to ask. Finally, he sat on his cot across from hers. You're not sleeping, he said softly. Sleep, the word felt foreign. It will come, she said. He hesitated. You want to talk about the shot? She blinked once, a slow, controlled movement. There's nothing to talk about. Reeves leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Most people feel something after a shot like that. Relief, shock, pride, something. She didn't look at him. I don't feel things that way, she said. He nodded. Yeah, I've noticed. She exhaled, not tired, not annoyed, just acknowledging the truth of it. It's not that I don't feel, she said. It's that feeling doesn't change anything. The shot still had to be taken. He studied her for a moment, as if trying to understand something too large to hold all at once. You know, he said finally, you scare people. Not accusing, not joking, just observing. She looked up. Why? Because you don't hesitate. She didn't answer. Reeves stood slowly, nodded once and left. The tent felt larger now. And emptier. 2 days passed before the debrief. Long enough for memories to settle into something fixed, too short for emotional distance. They gathered in the operations room, the drone footage displayed on a projector. Grainy, gray, figures moving like shadows. The mortar team, the valley, the shot. The playback slowed. Paused. Magnified. Her bullet hit the first target precisely center mass. Textbook, clinical. The room was silent. The instructor paused the video, pointed at the freeze frame. Extreme range confirmed, he said. Wind calculations validated. Bullet drop compensation verified. Clean trigger pull. No observable flinch. No loss of sight picture. Immediate follow-through. Smooth bolt cycle. He looked around the room. That's not something you teach, that's something you are. Sable didn't shift, didn't react, didn't breathe differently. But something in her chest tightened. Being seen was not the same as being understood. One of the younger SEALs raised his hand. "Ma'am," he caught himself, corrected quickly. "Chief, how did you know you'd hit it? At that range, there's a 3-second travel window. Most shooters lose confidence mid-flight." She looked at him, eyes steady. "If you doubt after the trigger breaks," she said, "you never understood the shot in the first place." The room went quiet again. Not in awe. In recognition. They realized they had never seen her. Not really. The debrief ended with formal approvals, commendations pending final paperwork. People stood, chatted, filtered out in loose groups. A few glanced her way, not with skepticism now. With respect. With caution. With something like gravity. She walked out alone. The desert evening was colder than the morning ever was. The world turned blue as the sun fell behind the mountains. The base lights flicked on, casting long shadows across the sand. She sat on the edge of a concrete barrier, elbows resting on her knees, staring out toward the valley. Footsteps again. These ones she recognized instantly. Morrison. He stopped beside her, didn't sit. They reviewed the engagement and confirmed striking distances, he said. They'll write your name into a training manual for this one. She didn't react. I know you didn't do it for recognition, he continued, but this will follow you. She looked at him then, not defensive, not challenged, just present. Does that bother you? He asked. She shook her head. No, she said, but it changes things. How? She took a slow breath. They'll expect I can always make the impossible shot. Every time, in every condition, every mission, they'll forget there is still risk. He exhaled. You're worried about being used. She didn't correct him. He sat beside her now, silent for a moment. You don't have to carry that alone, he said. She didn't look at him. I always have, she said softly. He didn't speak again. Because he understood. Some people come into the world already carrying something heavy. Other people choose to pick it up. She had never chosen. The burden had always been there. Night came fully, wind colder, stars brighter. She returned to the barracks, sat on her cot again. The tent was quiet now, everyone asleep or pretending to be. The generator hummed softly outside. The metal frame of the cot was cold beneath her fingers. She could have laid down. But she didn't. She sat there in the dark, perfectly still, breathing so quietly that it barely moved her chest. And then, so softly it was almost soundless, she whispered something no one else heard. Grandpa, what would you say now? The silence didn't answer. Her grandfather had always told her the hardest shot wasn't the one you took. It was the one you lived with afterward. At 8 years old, she didn't understand. At 15, she thought she understood. At 22, she thought she accepted it. At 31, she finally felt the truth of it settling into her bones. The silence wasn't peace. It was weight. The weight of being the person who does not fail. The weight of the person who has to act when others wait. The weight of being necessary. And necessary was the loneliest thing in the world. Outside, far off, a patrol truck rolled across gravel. Inside, she stayed still. The mission had ended. But something had begun. Something she couldn't yet name. But it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff in the dark. She knew she would not fall. She knew she would jump. Because that was who she was. And she did not get to be anyone else. Not anymore. How many missions had passed since the shot in the valley? Weeks maybe, or months. Time no longer moved in days. It moved in deployments, operations, insertions, exfil windows, supply flights, radio static, maps taped to tabletops. The desert didn't change, and neither did she. The world around her rotated through cycles of heat and cold, wind and silence, violence and quiet. But inside her, something had begun to shift. Not something loud, not something dramatic. Something like a slow crack in stone, invisible from distance, felt only in the bones. She didn't show it, she didn't speak of it, she didn't name it. But it was there, and it was growing. The mission briefing was short. They usually were when the situation was bad. Morrison pointed at a satellite-printed image, grainy rows of mud brick buildings in a steep mountain ravine, hostile territory, insurgent checkpoint. Intel suggested a high-value courier moving through at dawn. The team would intercept, quick in, quick out, surgical. Her role, overwatch on the northern ridge, long sightline, limited concealment, high elevation. She had done this 100 times. She nodded once, others did too. No objection, no questions, no jokes. Everyone trusted her now. And somehow, that was heavier than doubt had ever been. They moved through darkness. No moon, no wind, the kind of silence that felt unnatural, as if the mountains were listening. She led part of the ascent, boots gripping rough stone, body remembering how to move where gravity wanted to pull you apart. Reeves climbed beside her, breath steady, rifle slung tight. He finally spoke when they reached the ridgeline. "You ever think about what comes after?" he asked, voice low, not wanting to disturb the stillness of the world. She adjusted her scope. "After what?" "This," he said, sweeping his hand at the valley. "The work, the missions, the shots." She heard the question beneath the question. "Do you ever imagine a life where you are not needed to kill?" She didn't answer right away. The truth took a moment to find shape. "There is no after," she said. He was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. "I figured." And that hurt more than anything she could have said. Dawn crept slowly up the valley, bleeding color into the world. The courier convoy emerged like ghosts from the dust, 3 trucks, 6 fighters on foot, rifles slung casual, not expecting resistance, not expecting death. She tracked them through her scope. Breathing slow, heartbeat steady, mind quiet. But something was different today. Not wrong, just noticeable. Her hands were steady, perfect, as always, but her chest felt tight, as if the air had weight. She brushed it aside. Emotion doesn't matter, she told herself. The shot matters. 2 fighters approached the choke point where the SEALs lay hidden. Morrison whispered over comms, "Wait, wait, now." Silenced fire cracked, 2 targets down. The convoy reacted, confusion collapsing into chaos. Men shouted, trucks reversed. Someone fired blindly at shadows. She didn't wait for orders. Her first shot dropped the gunner climbing onto the truck bed. The second took the driver of the lead vehicle through the windshield. The third moving target sprinting. She exhaled, calculated drop, and dropped him before he reached cover. Reeves watched her work. Not amazed anymore. Just in awe of inevitability. The firefight ended fast. Silence settled again. The team moved in to secure documents, hard drives, radios. Standard procedure. Then something unexpected happened. From a side alley too small for vehicles, a figure emerged, running fast, trying to escape. Small. Too small. A child. Maybe 11, maybe younger, barefoot, wearing an oversized vest. Sable froze. The vest. Her stomach tightened. She didn't breathe. Reeves whispered, horrified, "Oh God." The boy wasn't running away. He was running toward the team. A suicide vest. Morrison shouted, "Sable, take him down now." Her crosshairs locked on the boy's chest. But suddenly, all she could see was her grandfather's hands. Steady, calm, teaching her to breathe. Not to kill. To understand. Her finger hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. A breath. A moment. A human moment. And that was enough. The boy stumbled. Tripped. Fell. The vest didn't detonate. The trigger had been dead, or damaged, or not wired properly. He lay there, dazed, confused, terrified. She lowered her rifle. Her pulse was pounding now, hard, loud, violent. Reeves stared at her. "You didn't shoot." She didn't speak. Morrison's voice cracked through comms, sharp and controlled. "Winter's status." She forced her breath steady. "Threat neutralized," she said. But her voice wasn't her own. Not steady. Not calm. Not cold. Human. Morrison didn't question it. The mission continued. The team extracted. Helicopters arrived. Dust took the valley back. But Sable didn't move from her position. Not at first. She stayed prone, staring at the place where the boy had fallen, her eyes still behind the scope. Her hands did not shake. Her breathing did not change. But inside something cracked. Something quiet. Something real. Back at base, the others celebrated the intel recovered. The mission was called a success. High-value data, confirmed enemy communication channels, no friendly casualties. But the boy. The boy. The boy. She sat on her cot again, boots still on, rifle still clean. Reeves sat across from her, watching her, silent. "You saw it," she said finally. He nodded. "You hesitated," he said, not condemning, just acknowledging. She didn't deny it, didn't defend it. "I hesitated," she repeated. He took a slow breath. "That hesitation saved him," he said. "No," she corrected quietly. "It could have killed everyone." He didn't argue. Because both things were true. Her hands finally trembled. Just once. Reeves saw. But he didn't comment. He just said, "You're allowed to be human, Sable." She looked at him then, and for the first time since the valley shot, emotion broke through her expression. "I don't know how," she whispered. Reeves didn't touch her, didn't comfort her, didn't speak. He just stayed. And in that silence, she didn't feel strong. She didn't feel precise. She didn't feel invincible. She felt tired. For the first time, truly tired. Because being the one who does not hesitate means someday the hesitation comes due. And the world changes. Not outside. Inside. Where the cracks begin. Where the cost begins. Where the war actually lives. She closed her eyes. And she knew. There are some shots you can't fire. And some you can't forget. And some never leave you at all. Why did memories wait for silence to strike? She didn't sleep that night. Her eyes closed, but her mind stayed awake, caught somewhere between breathing and remembering. The boy's face wasn't sharp in her mind. It wasn't terror or pleading. It was confusion. A child who didn't understand what he was doing. A child who had been handed death like a tool. A child who she almost killed because the world forgot to give him any other choice. And she had hesitated. The shot she didn't take was the one echoing now. Morning came as if nothing had happened. The desert wind carried voices, laughter, boots thudding across gravel. Routine swallowed the world again. The base lived on rhythm and purpose, but Sable didn't move with it the way she used to. She walked to the weapons shed to clean her rifle. Not because it needed cleaning, she had done that the night before, but because the ritual steadied her hands and she needed steadiness, even if only on the outside. She laid the rifle on the bench, bolt open, barrel gleaming. Reeves stepped in quietly, leaning against the doorway. He didn't speak. She didn't either, not at first. Silence wasn't awkward between them now. It had weight, meaning, shape. Finally, he said, "Command wants us briefed in 10. She nodded, not looking up. He hesitated, not for hesitation itself, but because of the question he had carried since yesterday. "You're thinking about him." She didn't ask who he meant. Her hand stilled. "Yes." Reeves stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You made the right call." She looked at him then, not cold, not fierce, just tired. There was no right call. And Reeves exhaled because he understood. There are missions that are clean. And there are missions that live inside you. The briefing room was dim, projector light flickering against the walls. Morrison stood in front, jaw tight. There was tension in the air, not fear, not confusion, anticipation. "This isn't a precision strike," he said. "This is rescue." Images flicked onto the screen, burned vehicles, shattered roads, a convoy ambushed in a mountain pass. Survivors captured. Navy logistics personnel not combat trained. Hostages now. Sable's eyes narrowed. Hostages meant negotiation windows. Negotiation windows meant time, and time meant fear. "Intel confirms one of the captured personnel is Lieutenant Avery Shaw," Morrison continued. The room went still. Shaw wasn't one of theirs, but everyone knew her. A Navy pilot, calm under pressure, sharp, respected, someone who flew them into hell and flew them back out. If she was taken, extraction wasn't optional. Sable watched Morrison's expression shift. Professional control strained tight around something personal. Because Morrison had history with Shaw. And history makes missions heavier. "We insert at night," he said. "Stealth priority. Hostages located inside a fortified structure built into a hillside. Expect layered security, elevated guard positions, possible underground holding areas." Reeves leaned in close, whispering to Sable, "This is going to get messy." She didn't answer. She already knew. Morrison looked at her. "Winters, long overwatch on the East Ridge. You'll have a direct line of sight into the compound courtyard. We'll rely on your eyes for movement calls." He paused. "And if needed, targeted elimination." She understood what he meant. He meant if they start executing hostages. She nodded once. But inside something recoiled. Not because she couldn't take that shot, but because she now understood the weight of every life held in the crosshair. She wouldn't hesitate again, she knew that. She couldn't. Others depended on her certainty. But certainty no longer felt clean. It felt heavy. Night came like ink spilled across the mountains. The team moved silent and low, navigating broken terrain. The compound emerged in faint moonlight. Stone walls carved into mountainside guard towers, a metal gate reinforced with welded scrap. Sable moved to the ridge, prone behind a jagged outcrop, rifle resting steady. Reeves lay beside her, spotting scope adjusted, breathing matching hers out of habit more than need. Below, shadows shifted, torchlight flickered, voices spoke in a language that echoed through rock and darkness. She counted movements, marked positions, noted rotations. She spoke quietly into comms. 3 guards at east wall, 1 on tower, 1 patrolling near gate, internal movement, courtyard traffic irregular. Morrison's voice answered, low and controlled. "Copy, hold positions." The team advanced in silence. Sable watched everything. But as minutes stretched into hours, something changed. A door opened inside the compound. 2 men dragged someone into the courtyard. A woman, hands bound, knees scraped raw from being pulled. Lieutenant Shaw. Her hair matted with dust, face bruised but alive. Sable's crosshairs settled gently on the guard holding her arm. She did not touch the trigger. Not yet. Not unless necessary. but Reeves glanced at her and saw something strange in her eyes. Not fear, not cold, something like memory. The child. The hesitation. Reeves whispered, "Sable, stay with me." She didn't look at him. "I am." Morrison's voice whispered through comms. "Hold, no engagement unless discovered." They waited. The guards argued. One shoved Shaw to the ground. She fell hard, dust rising. Another raised his voice, angry, frustrated. Something was happening, something unpredictable. Then another door opened, and a boy walked out. Not the same boy, but the same age. Bare feet, dirt-streaked face, holding a small lantern. The guards ignored him. Sable's chest pulled tight. Reeves watched her jaw clench. "Sable," he whispered. She didn't blink. The boy knelt beside Shaw and whispered something. Shaw's expression changed, softened just briefly, then tensed again when a guard kicked dust at them both. Her finger hovered near the trigger. But she didn't fire. She could fire, but not until she had to. And the world held its breath. Then, a shout. A guard spotted movement outside the wall. The alarm rose. Everything broke at once. Gunfire exploded. The compound lit with muzzle flash. Men shouted. Doors slammed open. Morrison barked, "Move, move, push the right flank." The SEALs surged in, precise, lethal, controlled. Sable tracked guard positions, calling movements, eliminating threat after threat. Her rifle became the anchor the team moved by. One shot. Reposition. Another shot. Corrections. Control. Clarity. But the courtyard turned chaotic. Shaw tried to crawl behind a water trough. The boy stayed beside her. A fighter grabbed Shaw by the hair, dragging her back into open sight. Sable tracked him. Steady aim. Perfect shot. She fired. He dropped instantly. Shaw scrambled away. But the boy stood frozen in the open. Gunfire sparked around him. Sable followed him through the scope. Not to shoot. To keep him alive. Her breath shook just once. Reeves touched her back, not guiding, just reminding her she was not alone. She called through comms. "Child in the open, do not fire courtyard center." Her voice, sharp, commanding, cut through the chaos. Morrison responded instantly. "Copy, all elements avoid center. Move hostages toward the east wall." Shaw grabbed the boy and ran, dragging him with her. The firefight ended fast. Too fast. Sudden silence fell, the kind that only comes after violence burns itself out. Dust hung in the air like ghost smoke. Reeves exhaled shakily. "You kept them both alive," he whispered. Sable didn't answer. She was staring at her hands. Hands that had taken lives. Hands that had spared one. Hands that didn't tremble, but felt like they should. She whispered, not to Reeves, not to Morrison, not to the team. "I don't know who I'm becoming." Reeves didn't try to answer. Because some truths are not comforted. They are endured. Extraction came at dawn. Shaw walked beside Sable after returning to base. The boy had been handed over to local medics, alive, safe, for now. Shaw stopped, turning to her. "They told me you were the reason I got out," she said. Sable didn't respond. Shaw searched her face. "You don't look like someone who feels heroic." Sable met her gaze. "There's nothing heroic about deciding who lives and who dies." Shaw's voice softened. "But you chose to save." Sable didn't look away. "No," she said, "I chose not to break." And that was the truth. Saving had not been mercy. It had been survival. Not of the body, but of the self. Shaw nodded slowly. You're holding something, she said, something heavy. Sable didn't deny it, didn't hide from it, didn't bury it. Yes, she said. Shaw placed a hand lightly on her arm. Don't carry it alone. Sable wanted to say she didn't know how. But the words didn't come. So instead, she simply nodded. Not agreement. Not acceptance. Just acknowledgement. The first crack had appeared. And now, the world would begin to pour through. Why did the nights feel longer now? Before, sleep had been a switch. She lay down, closed her eyes, and the world simply disappeared. Quiet, controlled, rest earned, rest taken. No drifting thoughts, no echoes of decisions, no ghosts. Now the silence carried weight. Sable lay awake in the darkened barracks, the soft breathing of the others threading around her. The base generator hummed outside like a steady heartbeat. It should have been calming. It used to be. But her mind replayed the boy. Not the one in the compound. The first one. Bare feet kicking up dust. The vest, the fall, the breath she didn't take. The finger that paused. The world that balanced on the edge of one decision. She turned onto her side, staring at nothing. Reeves slept across from her, one arm thrown over his head, snoring softly. The sound had once annoyed her. Now it grounded her, reminded her she was not entirely alone in this place. But she felt alone. Not because of distance, but because of understanding. Others carried memories of firefights, close calls, brothers lost. She carried something quieter, something harder to explain. The moment before a shot. The moment when life exists on both sides of a trigger. She closed her eyes. And the memory came, not of battle, not of war. Of Wyoming. Her grandfather's ranch. Dry grass waving in long afternoon wind. Sunlight warm, golden, slow. She was 10 years old. Kneeling beside him on a hill, the old Winchester between them. Everyone thinks a sniper is someone who kills without hesitation, he said, adjusting her grip. But a sniper is the person who sees every possible ending in the instant before the trigger breaks. She hadn't understood then. She understood now. She understood too well. She sat up, swung her boots to the floor, and slipped outside into the cold. The night air bit her skin. Dust and frost mingled on the ground. She walked past the supply tents, past parked vehicles, past the half-lit command building, until she reached the far fence overlooking the valley. The same valley where she had made the shot that changed everything. She leaned her hands on the metal railing. The mountains were black shapes against a darker sky, silent, empty, eternal. She exhaled. You out here lecturing the horizon again. She didn't turn. Morrison stepped beside her carrying a mug of something steaming. He offered it to her wordlessly. She took it. The metal was warm in her hands. They stood in silence for a long time. Finally, Morrison spoke. You did good work today. She didn't respond. He glanced at her. You don't believe that. She watched the valley deepen into darkness. I don't know what I believe anymore. Morrison nodded slowly. You think saving the boy was weakness. She didn't speak. That was close. Too close. It wasn't weakness, he said. It was humanity. She swallowed once. Her voice came quiet. Humanity gets people killed. Morrison looked at her, really looked. And the absence of it kills something in you. She didn't break. Didn't cry. Didn't shake. But the wind moved past her like an exhale. She wasn't ready to release. Morrison continued softly. You don't have to pick one or the other, Winters. She didn't look at him. I already have. He didn't argue. Because he knew. Some decisions are not made in moments. They're made in identities. The next operation came faster than any of them wanted. They were still cleaning their gear when the alarm sounded, short, sharp, urgent. Reeves met her at the equipment rack, handing over her rifle case without speaking. There was no confusion now. They moved with instinct. In the hangar, Shaw stood beside Morrison, not in uniform, still bandaged, still bruised, but standing. She locked eyes with Sable. Not gratitude. Recognition. Two people who had seen the same edge of the world. The convoy didn't stop after the ambush, Shaw said, voice rough but steady. They moved heavy weapons north. If they get into the next valley, civilian villages are in range. Morrison laid the map across the hood of a truck. We intercept here Mountain Pass. Narrow, high stone walls on both sides. Perfect kill zone for them, but we'll get there first. Reeves frowned. That road has no high ground for Overwatch. Morrison shook his head. None that we can reach in time. Silence. Everyone looked at Sable. Because when there was no Overwatch, the team moved blind. And blind teams died. Sable studied the map. The pass was tight, twisting, flanked by sheer rock. No ridge to climb, no structure to occupy, no elevation advantage. Unless... Her finger traced a line up the map. Past the pass. Up a ridge no one else had considered. Reeves followed her movement. You're not thinking. I am, she said. Morrison leaned forward, reading her. That's a 2-hour vertical ascent. Loose shale. No path. You'd have to climb with the rifle broken down and reassemble under fire. Yes. Then shoot downhill, through wind channels and thermal updrafts. Yes. Morrison studied her. That's not possible. She looked at him, calm, steady. You said the same thing once before. Silence. Reeves exhaled. You'll need a second climber. No, the angle only has room for one prone position. You could fall. Yes. If you fall, no one can get to you. Yes. Reeves stared at her. That's not bravery, that's... She met his eyes. That's necessary. He stopped speaking. Because he knew she was right. The climb was brutal. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just real. Hands gripping cold rock, boots searching for purchase that wasn't there, the rifle strapped tight to her back, digging into her shoulders, the night air thinning with altitude, breath burning, muscles shaking. She didn't rush. Didn't panic. Didn't force. She climbed the way she had lived, slow, precise, inevitable. Reeves followed the lower trail, staying near radio range to support. He couldn't help her, he knew that, but he stayed close anyway. Halfway up, she paused on a narrow ledge, catching her breath. Her fingers traced rock, grounding herself. Her heartbeat thundered, not from fear. From memory. Her grandfather's voice. You don't climb mountains to conquer them. You climb because staying on the ground costs you more. She climbed. The ridge summit came just before sunrise. The pass stretched below, black silhouettes of trucks moving through the gorge. She unstrapped the rifle. Assembled it by touch. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Her hands were steady again. Not because she was empty, but because she had made peace with the cost. She slid into prone position. The ground was rough, hard, sharp. She didn't notice. The convoy entered the kill zone. Her breath slowed. The world narrowed. Morrison's voice crackled in her ear. Winters, do you have visual? She exhaled. Yes. Are we clear to advance? The shot didn't happen yet, but the decision already had. She spoke quietly. When I fire, you move. Her finger rested on the trigger. Not hesitant. Not certain. Just ready. The shot broke. Thunder rolled across the mountains. The convoy erupted into chaos. Morrison's team surged forward. And Sable didn't think. She acted. Calm, precise, alive. And for the first time, she did not feel like she was disappearing into the gun. She felt like she was becoming whole. Not because the shot was righteous, but because the choice was hers. Not driven by orders. Not driven by fear. Not driven by proving anything. Just, this is who I am. Below, the battle played out. Above, she remained the still point in a world of motion. Reeves whispered into Calm's, breath shaking. "You're not alone, Sable." She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Because this time, she believed him. Even if only for a moment. Even if only on a mountainside in the freezing dawn. Even if it would hurt later. She believed him. And that was enough. For now, how does a breaking point arrive? Not like a shatter. Not like a scream. Not like a moment. It arrives slowly. Quietly. Like water wearing down stone. The convoy raid had been successful. No friendly casualties. Hostile weapons recovered. Village spared. Mission objectives met. Every report would say the same thing. Precision overwatch ensured operational success. That was the language the military used when a person carried the weight, so others didn't have to. But paper didn't know what her bones knew. That night the base celebrated, not loudly, not drunkenly, but with relief. The kind of relief that made even hardened soldiers breathe easier, laugh a little softer, sit closer together around shared food and weak coffee. The kind of relief that reminded them they were still human. Sable didn't join them. She sat at the far edge of the motor pool, sitting on a crate of empty fuel canisters, her rifle across her lap. The desert was ink black past the wire. Wind moved through the valley in slow sighs. She wasn't thinking. She wasn't remembering. She wasn't present. She was simply there. Reeves found her because of course he did. He always found her now. He didn't sit beside her right away. He stood quietly, hands in pockets, waiting to see if she would send him away. She didn't. So he sat. "You took 21 shots today," he said softly. She nodded. 19 confirmed hits. She nodded again. 2 suppression rounds, no wasted fire. She didn't speak. Reeves exhaled. "That's not skill, Sable, that's art." For the first time in days, she looked at him directly. Her voice was quiet. "Art doesn't kill people." Reeves swallowed. "Sable." She shook her head. "I don't need comfort, I need truth." Reeves took a breath, a steady one. "Then the truth is this," he said. "We needed you today, and you didn't hesitate." Her eyes lifted back to the valley. "That's what scares me." Reeves didn't respond. He didn't know how. Because this wasn't about skill. It wasn't even about morality. It was about identity. She was no longer the person who might take impossible shots. She was the person who would. Every time. Without question. Without pause. Without self left to bring home. Reeves leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. "You aren't losing yourself," he said. "You're changing. That happens to all of us." She didn't look at him. "When you change because of war," she said, "you don't get the old version back." He had no answer to that. Because there wasn't one. The official orders came 2 days later. Redeployment window. Rotation back home. 3 weeks. The team would return stateside. For most, relief. For some, disorientation. For her, a kind of quiet dread. Home was not peace. Home was memory. Home was the ranch. The wide sky. The rifle range, her grandfather's empty chair, the part of her life where she was before. Before war, before necessity, before identity reshaped itself around survival. But she didn't argue. She accepted the travel orders, packed her gear with practiced precision, wrapped her rifle carefully in its case. No one spoke about the boy. No one spoke about hesitation. No one spoke about the hilltop shot or the convoy or the compound. But things had changed. They didn't look through her anymore. They looked to her. And that kind of respect was heavier than doubt had ever been. The flight home was long. The world below was a shifting mosaic of brown, blue, green cloud. She stared out the window while others slept or watched movies or tried to pretend they were already home. Reeves sat beside her, headphones around his neck, one foot bouncing softly. "You nervous?" he asked. "No." He raised an eyebrow. "You're never nervous." "No," she said. "I just don't know which version of me is going back." Reeves looked at her for a long time. "You don't have to be the version they remember," he said. "Just the version that survived." She didn't respond, because she didn't know if that version was someone anyone wanted. Wyoming was colder than she remembered. The air sharper, the horizon wider, the quiet deeper. The ranch house waited for her, unchanged in its simplicity. A porch, a tin roof, windows fogged with the cold, and next to the porch hung above the door the framed Silver Star citation. Her grandfather, the ghost she walked beside every day. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house smelled like dust, wood, and old leather. Her grandfather's hat still hung on the rack. His boots sat by the door, as if he had simply stepped outside and never returned. Her chest tightened. The silence was louder than the firefight. She set her bag down, took her rifle case to the kitchen table, opened it, and froze. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, not from exhaustion, from something she didn't know how to name. She sat, stared at her hands, stared at the rifle, and for the first time since she was 8 years old, she did not reach for it. She did not clean it, did not oil it, did not break it down into parts. She simply stared, as if seeing it for the first time, or the last. A soft sound pulled her from the stillness. Footsteps, light, tentative. Her mother. She hadn't written ahead, hadn't called. She never did. Her mother stood in the doorway, hand on her chest, tears already there. They didn't speak. They simply stood in the same room for the first time in years. Then her mother crossed the room and wrapped her arms around her. Sable did not move. Not at first. But slowly, slowly, she let herself lean. Just a little. Just enough. Her mother whispered into her hair. "I'm so glad you're home." Sable closed her eyes. And the war didn't disappear. It came home with her. Quiet, heavy, unresolved. Because battles don't end when the gunfire stops. Sometimes the real war begins in the silence afterward. That night she sat on the porch, wrapped in an old blanket, watching the horizon swallow the last light of day. She heard the screen door open behind her. Then Reeves sat down beside her. He had followed. Of course he had. He didn't speak. Neither did she. They watched night arrive. Slow. Inevitable. Complete. Finally, Reeves asked her the question no one else had ever dared. "Sable, what do you want?" She didn't look at him. She didn't answer. Because she didn't know. Not yet. But she knew this. The quiet was no longer escape. It was confrontation. And the valley. And the boy. And the shot. And the versions of herself she had carried and lost. They were all here. All waiting. And healing was not a return. Healing was a reckoning. The kind that requires you to sit with the parts of yourself you once needed to survive. Even after the surviving was over. She breathed in. Slow. Steady. The wind was cold. The night was deep. Her pulse was quiet. She whispered not to Reeves. Not to the mountains. Not to the past. To herself. I'm still here. Not triumphant. Not healed. Not finished. Just still here. And sometimes that was the bravest thing a person could be. What does it mean to come home and not feel at home? Sable sat on the porch as dawn rose across the fields. The grass glittered with frost. The sky carried that soft pale blue that existed only in Wyoming mornings, where the day felt like it was deciding whether it wanted to be warm or cold, quiet or restless, gentle or harsh. She breathed in the air and tasted memory. The ranch had always been quiet, but now the quiet did soothe. It echoed. It reflected things. It put her inside herself instead of letting her disappear into motion and objective and necessity. Her mother was in the kitchen making breakfast like she had every morning of Sable's childhood. Bacon, eggs, coffee, sounds of pans and soft humming. Familiar, warm, something she knew by heart. So why did it feel so distant? Reeves slept in the spare room. He hadn't asked to stay. He hadn't announced he would. He just followed because some things don't require permission when they are true. He had become something like a witness to her life, a quiet presence who didn't demand explanation. But even he didn't know what lived inside her now. She stepped down off the porch and walked into the frost. The ground crunched softly under her boots. She walked toward the tree line, toward the open fields where her grandfather had trained her hands, her breath, her patience. The wind rustled dry grass, just like it had when she was 8. She looked out across the land and tried to imagine who she was before war. But memory is never whole. It is pieces, shadows, shapes that shift when you try to hold them carefully. She used to think returning home meant going back. She now understood there was no back. Only forward. Even if forward was unclear. Reeves found her by the fence line, sitting on the old wooden rail. He didn't speak at first. He had learned that silence was not absence but space. Finally he said, "Your mom says breakfast is ready." She nodded but didn't move. Reeves leaned against the fence beside her. They watched a hawk circling overhead. "She's glad you're here," he said. "I know. Are you glad you're here?" She didn't answer. Reeves didn't push. She looked at him, not dramatic, not intense, just honest. Do you ever feel like everything you've survived has shaped you into someone you don't know how to live with? Reeves looked down, exhaled. Every day. She watched him. You hide it better. He laughed softly, not amused, just understanding. No, I just break differently. She looked back out at the fields. If I stay here, I'll go numb. If I go back, I'll disappear. Reeves nodded. That's the problem no one tells you about. Home stops fitting. The war stops fitting. You don't belong to either anymore. She breathed in slowly through her nose. Then where do we go? Reeves didn't look at her this time. We build somewhere new. She let the word settle. Build. Not return. Not escape. Not endure. Build. The idea was terrifying. Because building requires wanting something. And she did not yet know what she wanted. Later that afternoon, her mother stood in the kitchen doorway watching her. The silence between them had stretched for years, not from distance, but from not knowing how to speak to each other anymore. Her mother finally said, "You don't have to pretend to be strong here." Sable looked up slowly. "I'm not pretending." Her mother stepped closer, eyes soft, not pitying, not helpless, just present. "You've been strong for too long." Sable didn't respond. Not because she disagreed, but because there are no words for the kind of strength that is survival. Her mother reached out, fingertips brushing Sable's cheek, gentle, warm, grounding. "You don't have to win anything here," she whispered. Sable closed her eyes, just for a moment. Just long enough to feel the truth of that. After dinner, as the sun began to set, she carried her rifle out to the field where her grandfather had built the shooting berm. The wood posts were still there. The bullet-scarred steel target still hung from chains, rusted now, weathered, but still standing. She sat up prone like she had thousands of times before. Reeves lay beside her, spotting scope at his eye, just like overseas, just like before, but not the same at all. She didn't fire. She just held the rifle in position, cheek against stock, breath slow. Reeves didn't rush her. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. Finally, she lowered the rifle. "I don't want to disappear into this anymore," she said. Reeves exhaled, relief and ache mixed together. "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because you're saying it now. The people who disappear never say it." She looked at him. Really looked. The man who had become the quiet place in the chaos. The person who didn't demand she be less or more. The one who stayed. She spoke softly. "You stayed." Reeves didn't smile. He didn't need to. "That's what you do for people who matter." Her expression didn't change. But something inside her did. Something small. Something fragile. Something like a seed. The next morning, she stood at the ranch gate with her rifle case in one hand and her grandfather's old Winchester in the other. Reeves stepped beside her, backpack on, ready to follow wherever she chose to go. She looked at the horizon. Wide open, unknown. She didn't know where she would go. She didn't know what she would become. She didn't know how to heal. But she knew this. She did not have to heal alone. She breathed in. Slow. Steady. Not the breath before a shot. The breath before a life. She turned back toward the house. Not to leave. To start. Because healing is not returning. Healing is building. Brick by brick. Day by day. Hand by hand. With others beside you. She walked back up the path. Her mother stood on the porch. Reeves walked beside her. The world did not shrink. It opened. And something inside her finally softened. Not fully. Not completely. Just enough to live. Just enough to continue. Just enough to hope. And in the quiet of that Wyoming morning, with frost lifting from the grass and sunlight warming the old fence posts, the truth settled gently across her shoulders. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Not loud. Not dramatic. Not heroic. Just steady. Just unwavering. Just there. In the silence. In the breath. In the choice to keep living. Sable Winters stepped into the next chapter of her life. Not as the sniper who made the impossible shot. Not as the soldier who never hesitated. Not as the woman who carried war in her chest. But as someone who survived. Someone who continued. Someone who stayed. Still quiet. Still precise. Still strong. But now, finally, human.